February 25, 1978, Plumas National Forest. A park ranger spots a flash of turquoise against the blinding white snow. It was a 1969 Mercury Montego. Inside, the scene was mundane: empty candy wrappers, road maps folded on the dashboard. But what investigators found under the hood was baffling. The engine was in perfect working order. The gas tank was a quarter full. The tires were not spun out. They weren't deep in the mud. 5 strong men had been in this car. With a combined push, they could have easily freed the vehicle. With a simple turn of the key, they could have turned on the heater. They could have survived the night. Instead, they opened the doors. They stepped out into the drifts, and they walked away from safety into the dark. To the residents of Yuba City, they were known simply as the Boys. Ted Weir, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, and Gary Mathias. They ranged in age from 24 to 32, but those numbers are misleading. 4 of the men had mild intellectual disabilities. They lived with their parents. They were homebodies. They didn't go to bars. They didn't date. Their lives were built on a foundation of rigid structure. Routine was their safety net. Gary Mathias was the exception. He was an Army veteran. He had seen the world. But he also suffered from severe schizophrenia. Without his medication, Gary could become unstable. But on this night, he was fine. He was taking his meds. He was the de facto leader. February 24th. The group drove to Chico to watch a college basketball game, UC Davis versus Chico State. Their team won. The mood was high. They stopped at Bear's Market for snacks, Hostess pies, a Snickers bar, a quart of milk. It was 10 p.m. The plan was simple: drive 50 miles south to Yuba City, a straight shot down the Valley Highway. They had a big basketball game of their own to play the next day. They had uniforms laid out on their beds at home. They had parents waiting up for them. But at the edge of town, the Mercury Montego didn't go south. It turned east. It began to climb, up a rocky, unpaved logging road, away from the valley floor, away from home, into the snow line. Why did they turn? It remains the case's most frustrating question. But we know they weren't alone on the mountain. There was a witness, a man named Joseph Shones. Hours earlier, Shones had gotten his own car stuck in the snow just up the road. In his attempt to push it out, he suffered a mild heart attack. He was stranded, in pain, freezing. Then, around midnight, he saw headlights. The Mercury Montego pulled up behind him. Shones saw the headlights cut the engine. He saw a group of men get out. Desperate, he rolled down his window and yelled for help. But the reaction was chilling. The moment he yelled, the lights went dark. The men went silent. Shones later reported seeing what looked like a woman holding a baby, simply standing in the headlights before they cut the power. Was this a hallucination brought on by the pain of a heart attack? Or did the boys see something, or someone, that terrified them? Shones yelled again. Silence. Whatever the boys saw that night, they viewed Shones not as a man needing help, but as a threat. And so, they abandoned their perfectly working car and fled into the deep forest. Days turned into weeks. The search was massive. Helicopters, dogs, horses, but the winter of '78 was brutal. The snow hid everything. It wasn't until the June thaw that the silence was finally broken. 19 miles away from the abandoned car, deeper into the wilderness, lay a Forest Service trailer. Inside the trailer, investigators found the body of Ted Weir. And this is where the case defies all logic. This is where the tragedy becomes a mystery. Ted had not died in February. His beard growth suggested he had lived for nearly 3 months inside that trailer. He had lived for 8 to 12 weeks after the disappearance. He was found wrapped in a sheet, frozen to death. Yet, a locker just feet away was filled with heavy wool coats. He never touched them. There was a propane tank outside. It was full. All he had to do was turn a valve. He would have had heat. he never touched it. Most haunting of all was the food. An outdoor shed contained enough military C-rations to feed all 5 men for a year. Ted Weir weighed 200 pounds when he went missing. When they found him, he weighed 100. He had starved to death, surrounded by food. Why? Why starve when a can opener is in the drawer next to you? Psychologists suggest a state known as learned helplessness, or perhaps extreme fear. Perhaps they believed the owners of the trailer were coming back. Perhaps they believed they were being hunted. In their rigid adherence to rules, it seems they chose to starve rather than steal the food or break the lock on the propane tank. Ted Weir died alone in the trailer. But what of the others? The remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling were found miles away. Scattered remains. Whatever happened that night, they never made it to the shelter. They succumbed to the cold on the walk up. Jack Hewitt's remains were found by his own father, a tragic end to a desperate search. Only his backbone and clothing remained. But Gary Mathias, the Army veteran, the man who knew how to survive outdoors, he was never found. But he left a clue. His tennis shoes were inside the trailer. He had taken Ted Weir's leather shoes, which were too big for him, and worn those instead. This implies Gary was alive in the trailer for a time. Did he leave to get help? Or did the lack of medication finally push him into a psychotic break? Did he walk out into the snow, hallucinating, disappearing into the vast wilderness of Plumas County? To this day, Gary Mathias remains a missing person. Toxicology reports on the bodies were clean. No drugs, no alcohol. Just 5 men, a wrong turn, and a cascade of fatal decisions. Some theories suggest they were chased from the convenience store. Others suggest Gary Mathias had an episode and the others followed him blindly into the mountains. But the truth remains buried in the snow. 5 men walked away from a working car. 1 survived for months and chose to starve. And the forest keeps its secrets.